Cultivated Marketer, episode 50, from radio mornings to public safety, a career built on continual learning. What if one of the most transferable skills in communications or marketing isn't a tool or a tactic, but the instinct to read a room, hold an audience, and pivot into listening and learning? Our next guest shares her journey from radio DJ to bureau chief. All right, Julie, Matt wasn't with us for this interview, and boy, he's
going to be bummed he missed it, actually.
He is going to be bummed, particularly because we spent a little bit of time talking about master's programs and a little bit of hard skill kind of retooling. Yeah. So from an academic standpoint, our guest this time is the Strategic Communications Bureau Chief at the Iowa Department of Public Safety, Colleen Powell. And there was a lot from a really interesting career transition there. I equate radio hosts in some level as a celebrity. You know, you got a performer gene.
Yeah, you got to be on, high energy
on, performer gene to helping protect and serve community. What a fascinating career journey. And what was really cool too is at the beginning of it, she led with her heart of hearts is around storytelling.
Yes.
So, and she talked about where she sees that manifesting from a storytelling standpoint is community trust. There were several themes of this episode, but maintaining and establishing trust and credibility, which a lot of marketing and communication professionals can relate to and they aspire to. That's one of the key themes folks will take away from this.
Yeah, I think her emphasis on building trust and seeing that as one of the major reasons she exists and the mission of the department as a whole is just building trust with citizens. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's so key because us marketers and communicators, we will constantly advocate for the role that communications and marketing plays in an organization and in a business. You need us to help you build that trust with your audience. And so in the case of the Department of Public Safety for Iowa, it is their citizens. It's the community. It's the people that live there and pay taxes. I absolutely loved how much she emphasized that and talked about the importance of building trust with the very people they are there to serve and protect.
And the building blocks of establishing that trust. And again, something else that I think should resonate with our audience is, I'm going to admit, I'm one of those folks. We whine about just maintaining consistency and accurate information from a branding standpoint. But in her role, it's mission critical. If you don't do that, people's lives are at stake.
Absolutely.
If you don't maintain the things I whine about, right? Because we're not selling enough widgets. For her, people's lives are at stake. And I found that really fascinating. Some of the guardrails they put in and some of the things that they do to maintain accurate information and that consistency too. That was another big thing.
Yeah, this is going to be a good episode. I think it's going to be really helpful for especially two groups of people. If you are new, like maybe you're in college or you've just graduated, you're trying to decide what kind of marketing communications career you want to go into. This is a great interview because we'll talk about a 180 career shift from one type of communications to a completely different type of communications. But two, if you're someone who is really considering career pivot, Colleen is going to tell you exactly what you should do. And it's not do these three things and then da-da-da-da. She just tells you one really simple thing. And I promise you, you can do it.
Yeah. And what I love about that too was on the latter part about the things you do, she was super honest about it as well. Mm-hmm. Just saying, this is what you're going to get out of it. And this is not what you're going to get out of it. And as somebody who's done his Clifton Strengths and Learner as one of his top 5, she echoes that notion of retooling, not a one-time event, but a continual thing, which is what feeds you and me and keeping doing this show with Matt. So it's like continual learning is definitely here. And with that, we'll let you all get to that continual learning and experience this episode with Colleen Powell from the Iowa Department of Public Safety. Welcome to Cultivated Marketer, where we talk marketing professional development so your garden of opportunity grows. This is Brent Bowen.
And I'm Julie Masson.
And Matt is on post-college graduation assignment in Europe, right, Julie?
That's correct. He is flying high across the ocean. I don't know if he's trying to avoid the Kansas City World Cup stuff or if he's trying to just get closer to where soccer is a bigger deal. I don't know, but he's not here.
He is not here. He's overseas. And I'm surprised he's not at IABC World Conference. I think he was rolled off the board this year and he said, you know what? I'm not on the board. I don't have to go to the conference this year. I'm going to go take family vacation. So all the power to Matt and enjoying a little time away with his family. Matt will be super geeked, I know, to listen to this episode once he gets the opportunity. And so we won't keep you from our guest. Our guest is the Strategic Communications Bureau Chief at the Iowa Department of Public Safety. She leads a bureau of 3 that serves as a communication resource for 13 divisions and bureaus, overseeing everything from a lot of my stuff that I love, digital web content, social media, to on the earn side, press releases, media relations, graphic design, and something you and I don't deal with, Julie, open records requests.
Nope, we definitely do not. And I'm thankful for that.
Thankful for that as well. We'll get into that. But before she found her home in public service, our guest spent 22 years co-hosting a radio morning show, which means she's done a little of this. And she knows better than most what it takes to connect with an audience, hold people's attention, and communicate under pressure. She's living proof that the skills that make a great communicator don't expire when the format changes. Colleen Powell, welcome to the show.
Oh man, thanks for being here. That's a heck of an introduction when you guys put it like that. I feel the pressure to perform here, but thank you for having me.
Well, listen, I think I feel a little bit of the pressure because as a kid that grew up in Iowa, I remember hearing your voice on the radio when I would drive to Des Moines for work. So I thought, oh man, I have to get my radio voice on because we're interviewing someone who has actual radio experience. So I'll try and live up.
Yeah, you guys sound good. You're meeting the marks. You sound good.
Thank you. Well, I get to dive into this interview with you, Colleen. I love asking our guests where they came from when it comes to their communications career. So talk to me about, as Brent said, 22 years in radio. That's a really long time. It's not a small thing. That's a career. So how did you get started in the field of communications? And what was it that made you take the leap into public service from your radio career? And also, as a aside, was it terrifying?
Like so many people, it started in high school on the speech and debate team. There was a category called radio speaking. I don't know if that resonates with either of you or anyone who's listening, but I competed while in high school and got a lot of attention, did really well, and thought maybe there's something here for me. So I majored in radio, TV in college, and eventually landed at a radio group in Springfield, Illinois. And when I was initially in Springfield, I was doing both the morning show. I was the news chick on Steve and Joey in the morning on an oldie station. And then I was also selling advertising to businesses in the community. And at one point, I just thought, I love this work. I love doing the morning show. I want to do it full time because I was kind of burning it at both ends. So I ended up in Des Moines and had a tremendous amount of fun with Ken and Kurt in the morning. A lot of laughs, learned a lot. But at some point along the way, I realized the radio industry is just changing a lot. There's so many other ways that people can get entertainment. And so I kind of saw the writing on the wall in that it wasn't going to be something I was going to be able to retire into. So I went back to take some classes at the local junior college, specifically digital marketing and strategic communications, to hopefully set myself up with some hard skills, knowing that at some point I would want to transition. And so in 2022, my contract came up and I just thought, I'm not going to resign. And so, I left radio with really no plans. So as far as getting in specifically to public service, I didn't know this was going to be my path. But when I was interviewing for different opportunities, I thought, gosh, I interviewed initially within DPS, our highway safety office, and their mission is ultimately through partnerships, lower the rate of death and serious injury on Iowa roads. And I was like, of all the things I can sell and I can be a part of storytelling, why not saving lives and trying to influence driver behavior so people make better decisions behind the wheel? That's something I can kind of sink my teeth into. And so I was excited about that opportunity. I did that for a couple of years. And then I ended up working in traffic safety records and data, which Anybody in marketing knows you got to get into the data these days. You got to know where the stories are and how people feel about the products or whatever it is you're selling. I got a little taste of the data. And then the opportunity came to move from the Highway Safety Office within DPS to the StratCom Bureau and to work with all of the areas within the Department of Public Safety, sort of broadening from protecting and serving, not just on the roadways, but overall in preventable injuries and death. I thought, oh, that'll be great. Even more stories. So that's kind of how I ended up here, and I'm really enjoying it.
I love that you said that's a story I can sell. So I do have to ask a really random aside. You know, when you're driving down the interstate and you see those pop up trailer signs that give some kind of a warning or message about the road, sometimes they're really clever. As a communicator, I always wonder who wrote that copy. So were you writing the copy for any of that at any point in your role?
Those here in Iowa is called the Roadside Chat Project and is managed by the Department of Transportation, who our Highway Safety Office and obviously the Iowa State Patrol work and collaborate with very closely. We had a task force. We were in the building my very first week here, and I tracked down the director of the Bureau who kind of managed that program. And I said, listen, I know this isn't exactly our thing, but I would love to be a part of the team that puts together these messages. And of course, he was like, oh, well, we'll take your creativity and your enthusiasm.
I said, please, please come help.
And so I did sit in on a few of those. A ton of work goes into them. I think, done that project for maybe 10 years. They just recently put it to rest. Nationally, there was some criticism on the signs. Although they were delivering traffic safety messages, were they distracting? I don't know. In my mind, when else are you talking about traffic safety? To me, it really connected specifically the community that they're serving. And that project made sense to me. I know it was met with some criticism, and ultimately they decided to end that, but I was a fan. I don't know if everybody was, but I was a fan.
Everything that's produced has a critic out there somewhere, I think, at
Yeah,
this point, even if it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
I know.
I don't like my bread sliced that way. I mean, come on. We talked about radio, which the funny thing, I just mentioned bread. I was thinking Springfield, Illinois, the home of the horseshoe. I used to
Yes,
live,
the horseshoe.
yes, if you've had a horseshoe.
Yes, you had the toast, the burger patty, the French fries, and then the cheese sauce, if you agree, was what set every restaurant apart. And it was who
Mhm.
had the better cheese sauce that went over all of it.
Yeah, the horseshoe is the delicacy of Springfield, Illinois. I spent some time there in grade school, about 5 years in grade school, and they deep fat fry those things now, which is gross.
Wow, the more you know. This is new. All this is new to me.
That's too much.
It's already bad enough that they're 3,000 calories. Do we really need to make them six? Going back to your time in radio, you're essentially a live communicator there. And you talked about a bit of this transition from spending a couple decades doing that and some time doing that and then deciding going back to school. There's a lot of similarities that you saw probably in the roles, but then also you noted some differences. What are some of the skills that did translate from your time in radio to the roles you have now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my interview skills. I spent a lot of time on radio doing exactly what you guys are doing, bringing people in, letting them tell their story and listening and asking questions. And our listeners would call in and engaging with them. That's helped me quite a bit. I spent a lot of time in this job just trying to figure out what everybody does and listening. I think being relatable and being vulnerable has also helped me in the role, knowing when I'm not the smartest person in the room. And that is often the case. I'm there to be a consultant and listen and give my level of expertise, but there's a lot of subject matter experts in this building. Being able to understand what they do and know when I'm in over my skis is important. You're not expected to know everything. You do have to know who to ask. So that's been good and all those skills transferred. What surprised me about this work is just the tremendous amount of work being done. This building houses the investigative side in several different specialty areas: major crimes, gaming, narcotics, cyber crimes, fire. Obviously, the ISP is here. So their investigations, car crashes, and what's happening on our roads. We also have several bureaus in the building, and they're not just doing grant management, which was a lot of what we did in the Highway Safety Office, but those people also become subject matter experts in road safety, school safety, drug prevention, professional standards, recruitment. And all of that is just in an effort to best manage the grants and distribute that funding. On top of all of that, there's being familiar with the Code of Federal Regulations, state code, policies, administrative rules. There's just a ton to know. It's really overwhelming. It surprised me, and that's not to diminish of what I had previous thought of public service and work being done, but it's a lot. There's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, I'm sure it was eye-opening when you're moving into that kind of sector when you weren't in that sector prior. And then from that being a big surprise, what from the schooling standpoint really translated well to your new role?
Going back and getting some of those hard skills in digital marketing and understanding the many different platforms and how to work them. Obviously, some of the strategic planning, but even then you learn it. I'm sure you guys know, and anybody listening, you go to school. I have a friend who just finished up her strategic communications master's, and she's like, the industry changes so much that by the time they're teaching it and they build the curriculum, there's something new. So it's like, you got to be in it. I mean, it all helps. I think it builds your confidence. I would say in whatever professional development you do, whenever there are those opportunities, if it builds your confidence and you can bring a little something to the table and into work, then that's great. But so much of us relate to, we're learning as we go here.
Yeah, it's foundational at best. I'm kind of chuckling because I end up giving a talk on using artificial intelligence in the work we're doing right now, which is on podcasting. And I present it probably every other month, and every 2 months the presentation changes because the world is moving so fast. So true. It's foundational at best, but great to hear that you got that good foundation.
Our co-host Matt that is gone today, when he listens to this, he's probably going to be just itching to ask the questions that he would have loved to ask, because he is a professional teacher of marketing and communication. So I'm sure he would just be nodding along with this. I really resonated with that a lot, actually, because this is how I went from my Iowa State world to my KU world, which I'm still a diehard Cyclone, don't worry. But I went to KU because I hit that same point in my career where I knew some stuff within communications, but I knew there was a lot of things like PR and media relations, especially, that I thought, I've got to get better at this. And so I went back to school, got my master's. That's how I met Matt. So I think this is really good advice. And I'm always encouraging communications professionals, you've got to keep up leveling, especially in communications, because things are changing. So let's talk about that. As I've said, I spend my weeks pretty much every day at some point talking to a nonprofit communicator. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm talking with communications professionals at a wide variety of career levels, but I end up talking with people who've been in the industry for 10-ish, 15 years, and a lot of them are looking to make a pivot. Some of them, though, have been in their career for even longer than that. And so I was really encouraged to hear you talk about making a pivot after you'd been doing something for so long. You really made a big pivot. I mean, radio to strategic communications at the Department of Public Safety, that is a big pivot. And so I think kudos to you, one, for going back to school, as you said, learning the hard skills. I think that's amazing. But what would you say to someone who is at that tension point in their career and they're not really sure what to do?
Yeah, well, do it.
Okay, do it.
Just you got to do it. And growth comes when you are uncomfortable. And I didn't come up with that platitude, but I know we've all heard it and it is true. And as much as I would say for me, the past 4 years have really challenged me and left me at times with a decent amount of imposter syndrome. I'm proud of myself. If you had told me 5 years ago that I was going to be sitting in the rooms that I sit in today and doing the work that I've been doing, I would have told you I can't do that. But it is possible. And there are going to be things that you're not necessarily comfortable with going into a position. I remember my husband telling me initially when I was looking at jobs and I'm going through the job descriptions and trying to figure out what might be a good fit. And he'd say, well, you should apply for that. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't know if I can do that. What about this part of the job or this part? And he's like, Colleen, if you are looking at a job description and you can check every single box, then you're overqualified. Then you should be looking at something else. So there is always going to be something in that job description that it makes you a little nervous, but maybe that's excitement. It's not nervous like, oh, I can't do this. It's nervous like, what if I can? What if I can really grow into this? Just like we were talking about, there are going to be things that you learn as you go. Certainly, though, as you talked about too, Brent, if you can get the training ahead of time, if it gives you the confidence to apply, then do that. If you need to do that first, but just know, as we've kind of talked about a little bit, there are going to be things that are different and you're going to learn when you get there. So I'm glad that I pivoted. I'm glad I got over my fears and what felt very scary to me and uncertain and a lot of what ifs. Every day I learned something and move forward. That's the best you can do.
I imagine that learning curve, part of that was the sector you moved into, public safety communications. You were talking about fear and being uncomfortable. I'm sitting here thinking about where you're sitting and how I would handle that, because it's got this interesting dynamic to it, right?
Yeah.
You're serving the public,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you're protecting ongoing information. You've got investigations. You're managing the reputation of the department. So there's this balancing act that you have to do. And I maybe have too many loose lips that I'm not sure I would manage that too well. So how do you balance that component of the job day to day and as you think about your role?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have some redundancies in place, but people think that strategic communications is just about protecting the agency's image, but we view it as protecting trust. We serve the public by sharing accurate information in a timely fashion. Now, we're also a state agency, so sometimes it's just not up to us. We get asked to assist in investigations from local agencies, so we also have to collaborate with their needs and their comfort levels. So there's some of that communication and collaboration that happens. But every day, we are balancing transparency with responsibility. But those are not opposing goals. But maintaining the integrity of an investigation and sharing the information with the public are both part of our mission. We feel like if people know they can count on us to be accurate, then even when the answer is no further comment right now, that credibility can pay dividends when it matters the most. To sum that up, accuracy matters more than speed. And we do have to take all those things into consideration. We take that seriously. So it is a balancing act.
I appreciate the way you frame that too, as more of a complementary component of maintaining the trust of the public too. That's interesting distinctions too, from the standpoint as well as time, because in this environment in which we live, people want everything immediately, right?
They do. And half the time, get into the comments. Somebody tends to feel like they know something. That, of course, leads itself into a whole other realm of wanting to, which I hear a lot, especially in crisis communications, to control the narrative. But I don't even know how much of that is possible. And especially when we really just want to put the facts out there. It's what do we know at the time and what are we comfortable putting out to protect the investigation and the potential justice systems and those potential ramifications. We have to consider all that. So you take a deep breath.
That's really good. You take a deep breath, and you have to take a deep breath and realize people are going to think and believe what they're going to think and believe, no matter what you say.
Yeah.
That's a lesson I've had to learn over and over and over again.
At the end of the day, the best you can hope for is you get the benefit of the doubt, right? If you've built that trust with the community that you serve, that when you're asking them to be patient with us as we are also wanting to do good investigative work and figure out what is happening, that they give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's what you hope for.
Okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit because this is going to get a little nitty gritty is not the right word, but I think it's helpful sometimes to do like a job shadow with our guests and say, what does it look like to do your job? So here's a great example. The reason I know Colleen is because I have a brother that works for the Department of Public Safety in Iowa. And so this past year, we were all together up in Iowa over Thanksgiving, and something happened. And my brother ended up working most of Thanksgiving. And he was working on his computer, and I asked him, what are you working on? He said, we're putting together the final pieces of a press release. Of course, that raised my interest. I said, wait a minute, you guys write your own press releases? And he kind of talked me through that. But I would love to understand, as much as you can share, what does that look like when you're working with agents on the ground or there's a case that has happened? How do you, at your level within your role, how do you get involved with that level of press release? And then if it's a case where maybe the media are pushing for more information, how do you handle all of that? Now, I know that's a little bit of a two-part question, but you're a good communicator, so I trust you to handle it. No soft questions here. No softballs.
Okay. Well, the first part of your question, deciding what to say, I rely pretty heavily on the subject matter experts, as I mentioned before. And, your brother being an agent is certainly someone I'm relying on. He knows the details. He knows where the investigation is at. And so that's an important piece. I don't know those details. And the wording is important. And one thing I've learned is that saying less isn't the same as being less transparent. Transparency means being truthful and clear. You're not necessarily sharing everything immediately. Sometimes the most responsible thing we can say is there's no further comment at this time. Nothing else is being released. As far as being consistent with that, that comes from having principles instead of reacting to pressure, right? Whether it's a high profile case or something that is receiving just a little bit of attention, we are asking the same questions. Is this accurate? Is it confirmed? That's a big piece of it. Could releasing it harm the investigation? Could it affect the victims or the families? Could it create problems later in the judicial process? Those considerations really drive our decisions. It's not who's asking or how loudly they're asking, how many times we're getting requests throughout the day. We don't negotiate facts against deadlines. So we just tried to be consistent about that. And I think the example there is sometimes you could roll up on a scene and think you know the details. You think it seems obvious who's the victim here, who's the perpetrator. But if you make those labels in the press release and then the investigation continues and you find out, well, maybe that wasn't the victim. It turns out that was the perpetrator and that person was killed in self-defense or whatever had transpired. If we've already put out a press release with those kind of labels, that's public record and that's going to come back possibly during the trial. Well, we want to be sure and accurate about what we're putting out.
I have a feeling a lot of communications professionals listening to this, although we worry about sending emails with typos or posting things, I don't think we have this level of, oh my word, if I get this wrong, this could be real problematic.
It's a tough learning curve. I'm sure a lot of the people listening can relate to this, tend to look at especially strategic communications. You're thinking strategically about it. You want to be proactive. How do I get in front of this? How do we get the right storyline out there? How do we control this? And thinking of all those things, it's a very delicate dance of, yes, what can we put out? How can we deliver that? But also, protective of the process. It just is a real balancing act. And I've learned to be more patient with it all and not quite so reactive or feeling like, oh, we've got to say something. Because if you think about it, what we're appealing to is most of the time just curiosity. It's very rarely that there is a real public threat, like never. It's an incident that happened, it's controlled or it's done. We see no reason for public threat. And so it's really just people's curiosity. And how much do we want to risk to appease that?
What you framed there sounds a lot like the traditional types of requests or the traditional types of communication that you would handle. You acknowledged when you were career transitioning and thinking about the landscape of radio that the world was changing from a media standpoint. And so one of the things that Julie and I imagine that you probably get are some abnormal requests now in the form of true crime podcasts, true crime TV.
Yeah.
They're at the height of their popularity. I'm not going to lie, this may be the only episode of any of the podcasts that I do of this that my wife will actually listen to.
Is she a true crime podcast aficionado?
Her favorite one is My Favorite Murder, which is funny. Oh, their tagline is stay sexy and don't get murdered. So they're at their height of their popularity. How often do you get requests from true crime podcasts? And managing those are probably more complicated than it sounds.
Yeah, we do. We get a lot of those people. They're very curious. And obviously, you guys, professionals, spend a lot of time creating a very quality product. But I'm sure anybody can do a podcast. There's all kinds of podcasts out there. It's pretty saturated. So when I talk with friends about this, they're surprised to learn that participating in a documentary or podcast or television program isn't always as simple as just saying yes, because those stories can often involve victims, surviving family members, witnesses, cases that may still have legal implications even years later. So even after a case is closed, words matter. Information that gets shared out of context, or if there's a misstatement or details that weren't part of the official record, can create confusion. They can raise questions. They can have these unintended consequences. We just have to be very thoughtful about how we participate and ensure that we're honoring the facts and respecting everyone that is involved. because we can obviously appreciate the public's interest in the incredible work that our investigators are doing, and they are doing awesome work. But our first responsibility is always the integrity of the case and to the people that are impacted by it. Telling a compelling story is important. I'll be the first one. I'm an advocate of a good story. So for me, I'm like, oh, this is a great way to showcase all the wonderful work that we're doing. But telling it accurately and responsibly is really the most important part. So we have to tread lightly there.
Tread lightly is the key, I hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many times have I said that? Have I said that a lot? Sorry.
No. I'm hearing it, even if you don't say those exact words. I'm hearing tread lightly.
Yeah.
Could you share with us potentially even like in a month, how many requests you might get of that nature?
Well, we will get particular podcasters who will submit multiple requests in one request. They're looking at several different cases, but something came through from maybe Dateline, even just a couple of weeks ago. We get some of the bigger television shows. We get the podcasts.
Mhm.
I'm sure your favorite true crime podcast has contacted us about something. So,
Sure.
I mean, at least daily.
And are they coming to you or are they coming to agent? Do the agents who
They
get them?
come in through a records request, through an Iowa Open Records request. Yeah.
Records request. Okay. It's not my genre. I like a good story like the next person. So if I get sucked,
Brent's backtracking. He's like, I don't want to be labeled as one of those.
if I get sucked in, I get sucked into them. I just don't seek them out. Like
Yeah.
they're folks that's all they do. So yes.
I know they're junkies. Listen, I'll never forget this. Was several years ago. I came home and my husband was catching, I can't remember which one of the television shows it was, but the story was a radio morning show personality was killed by her husband, who is a firefighter. And my husband is also a part-time firefighter. So when I walked in and like he's watching the show, I kind of caught what he was watching and I thought, are you taking notes? Like, what is happening here? A little too close to home, but yeah, I mean, everybody likes them. You get sucked in.
All sorts of curious things happen in those. So yeah, it's compelling. Human nature's compelling.
So you do work in a field of communications that is very unique. We just talked about the true crime requests. What about the other kind of requests that come in to your office? Can you walk us through how you actually handle that? How does your team manage the volume? All of that.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking just now about one piece of that, but we have legal obligations under Iowa's open records law and Chapter 22 to provide access to public records while also protecting information that is confidential by law. So what it means in practice is that every request requires careful review. We spend a lot of time reviewing them. We work closely with the subject matter experts and legal counsel to determine what records are responsive, what information can be released, and whether there are some statutory protections that require certain information be redacted. That all kind of falls within our bureau. Like I said, we do work closely with our legal counsel. And so we're balancing transparency and responsibility. I suppose been another theme of this. Our goal is to provide access to public information in a timely and professional manner while ensuring we're complying with the law and protecting sensitive information. So it's really detailed work, but it's part of maintaining that public trust, and it is an obligation.
It seems like one of those things that if the department didn't view communications as a strategic function, that is my mantra about communications, that communications is a strategic function of an organization, not a service department. And so I think it could be really easy for the department to say, oh, records request, that's just an admin thing. Just have someone filter those. I love that that funnels through your office.
Yeah, because we will also get our media requests will come in through records requests if they're looking to build a story and trying to better understand whatever it is that they're looking into. So we look at all of them very closely. And then we also want to be responsive. That's the other side of it in a timely fashion, the best we can. Some of them are very detailed and they're going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. Some of them require a lot of redaction before we can send them out. So it depends. And at the end of the day, we don't decide what should or shouldn't be public based on who is asking. We apply the law consistently. That's an important piece of it.
There's another theme: consistency, transparency, and tread lightly. Those are the three themes of this episode, Colleen.
Yeah, accuracy and public trust too. That was a nice lead into the next question, Colleen, because you've got a team of 3. You're managing 20 social media handles, 7 divisions, 6 bureaus, complex content operation. A lot of folks could learn some things from the way you all probably handle and think about governance. We just talked about consistency. You've got to manage accuracy through all this. How are you managing that accuracy? And even just most of us are just trying to manage a consistent brand voice across all those channels, let alone accurate information and maintaining that trust across all those channels. How do you guys do that?
I guess I should preface this by saying, I don't know if this is the best model. I'm about 6 months into this, and we're always reassessing and evaluating. So for right now, that is what we're looking at. Again, I lean into those subject matter experts, and we do have different experts managing some of the pages of the different divisions and bureaus and their channels. When I came into this position, I did see an opportunity to get us all together and meeting monthly so that we could talk about the content, we can collaborate, we can talk about the policies. I mean, we do have, the state has a social media policy. We have a social media policy. Is everybody real familiar with that? Are we all operating within those rails? So getting us all together on a monthly basis, I think has helped quite a bit to make sure that we're all on the same page. And also really getting people thinking about, why do you have this channel? Like all of us do in marketing communications. I know we tell people that, before you start all these social channels, what do you want with this? What's your goal here? And that even when you're posting or you're putting something out on X or LinkedIn or wherever you're at, what do you want people to do with it? Who's the audience for this? And that's different depending on the division or the bureau, whose channel you're looking at. Some of them are very public facing, like the Iowa State Patrol is over 200,000 followers. That's managed by the Iowa State Patrol PIO. Him and I work closely together, and he comes into those meetings. He's always looking for ideas. Some of our other ones, like the Highway Safety Office, and where I used to be when I initially came to the building, we've got a lot more stakeholders and traffic safety advocates. That content looks different. Me being able to be a resource and someone to bring ideas to the table and get people thinking strategically about social media, because most of these people, they're not communications marketing specialists. They're special agents, they're troopers, they're program planners. And so as much as I can be a resource and bring those people together, I think has been very helpful.
Even just bringing it down to the rudimentary component of it, like you said, is what do you want these folks to think or do? What's the purpose and goal here? Those good grounding questions, particularly if that's not where their headspace generally goes or typically goes.
And anyone in your audience who has walked into a job or position where you have multiple product lines can relate to this. How are we telling all these stories? Do we really need different channels? Sometimes you do, and I guess it depends. Or can we put this all under one channel and just use little bits and pieces? I know as someone who manages specifically the Iowa Department of Public Safety's channels, I'm like, we're just made up of the divisions and bureaus underneath us. So if all of you have independent pages, I don't have a lot to post. Like, where's my content? Mm-hmm. So anyway.
You're the one having to get super creative in the storytelling.
I'm like, you are my story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're like, let me tell your story.
Dateline just called. Let me get back to them, right?
Okay, everything you've talked through today, I'm just amazed that it's just you, a graphic designer, and a records custodian. Is that correct? But you're supporting 13 divisions. So my nonprofit communicators who are listening to this, they will resonate with this because most of the nonprofit communicators I work with are teams of one, which I got to say, public service and nonprofits, there's a lot of similarities, different outcomes. How do you prioritize the important things and the strategic goals when everything probably feels really urgent, especially in your line of work?
I think what's been very helpful when I came in, what are the goals of our bureau, and sort of broke down those silos. Well, we all have very specific skill sets. We know what needs to happen and what we would consider to be a success. And breaking down some of those silos and making sure that there are redundancies even amongst the three of us has been pretty critical. And bringing my graphic designer into some of the website content or even just some of the social media posting and scheduling so that if I'm gone for 2 weeks, there's someone else who can pick up that slack. And the same for me. I have to know, although I don't live day in, day out in the world of our records request, I have to know what are her pain points and how can I help her? Is it a process that's not working out? So we're just regularly touching base. And I think it's been helpful to, operate more as a bureau than just being siloed. I'm just the supervisor and she's just the graphic designer and she's just the records custodian, we're sharing the work.
Well, you've clearly established that nobody's just anything and you're not just one thing in this conversation. It's a great lead into our newish segment that we've got here, and we're hoping you'll play along. We're going to alternate here, Julie and I. We've got 4 quick questions for you. Okay. And the first one goes back to your past life as well as today. We're going to have you juxtapose your past life to today. Radio or podcast, which is harder to do well?
The podcast, no doubt, it's hard to cut through. It's not easy to produce. And you don't have the immediate audience engagement. You guys, when you're judging the success of a particular episode, see it on the back end. In radio, we knew if a topic wasn't hitting because the phones weren't ringing. So we could pivot and make a change. Podcasts, they don't have that luxury.
Yeah, a little more asynchronous. And like you said, when the pandemic happened, we went from about 1 million podcasts. You're talking about saturation, from 1 million to 3 million. So there's all your records requests. That's when you saw that. When I saw that.
Yes.
I would like it noted that the Cultivated Marketer started right before the pandemic. Even though I was not involved, I can't take credit for that. I was not on the show then, but good job, Brett and Matt. You were cool before it was cool, right?
That's right. Very forward thinking.
Very forward thinking. Okay, what is one communication skill every marketer should steal from law enforcement?
Pun intended, right?
Asking questions. Law enforcement, do you know why I pulled you over? Do you know why we called you in to talk? Have you had anything to drink? So asking a lot of questions.
Can I ask that question before meetings? Have you had anything to drink? I might take that one from law enforcement, right?
I would ask, did you read the agenda before our meeting?
Well, speaking of things to drink, okay, your marketer's fuel. Is it coffee, press conferences, or chaos?
This was tough. This one's a tough one because I love coffee, but I'd lean into chaos. Chaos gives me an opportunity to be a calm voice and to bring some level-headedness and some reason. And I feel like that's a good day.
Yeah. And earlier you said just breathe, right?
Just breathe.
There was the just breathe. Just breathe. Excellent words.
She reminds me of our past guest, Amy Whitfield. We had her on to talk about crisis communications, and she's the same way. She said, my heart hates when I'm being brought into a crisis, but my head loves it because she loves being the one that can help bring order out of chaos. So you guys are a unique breed. I do not have this gene that you have, Colleen, but I'm glad you do.
Well, I'll have to listen to her podcast. The people who work in crisis communications fascinate me. I've always found that industry very interesting.
All right, last question. What's one word? And you had several. I think I counted 3. Brent added 2 more. You had like 5 words that you used throughout our conversation. What's one word every communicator should lead with?
Why. You got to find the why.
Purpose, purpose, purpose. I love it. Colleen, you've been so gracious with your time. We've really enjoyed this. Spent a lot of time last summer in the roads of Iowa, leading myself to Des Moines, many different trips from Kansas City. Anything else you'd like to mention that we may have missed in this conversation?
I appreciate the opportunity to share the perspective of the Department of Public Safety and as a law enforcement agency and the way we look at communications and building that relationship with the communities we serve.
No, that's great. Colleen, thanks so much for joining us, sharing a bit about your career journey and, peek behind the curtain of a sector not a lot of folks in our industry probably get to see every day. Really appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you.
All right, everybody, you can learn more about the Iowa Department of Public Safety at dps.iowa.gov. Again, that's dps.iowa.gov. We'll have more notes and background in the show notes for this episode. If you found value in today's episode, check us out on our website, CultivatedMarketer.com. You'll also be able to subscribe to us, rate us, and leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platform, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Remember, a garden of opportunity grows with Cultivated Marketer.